Welcome to the Wellbeing Career podcast. Today I have an incredible guest joining me, which is none other than Reid Davis. Reid is a board certified holistic health practitioner and a founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, a leading expert in uncovering hidden health issues and empowering people to take control of their well-being. With years of experience in functional lab testing and natural healing, Reid has helped thousands of practitioners and clients find the root cause of chronic health problems and achieve true vitality. We'll be diving into Reid's approach to health and getting actual tips that you can use in your own wellness journey. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. And a very welcome podcast, Reid Davis. How are you today, Reid?
Fine, David. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. So let's get this started. So where are you right now on planet Earth?
I'm in San Diego, California. I live up in the mountains about 45 minutes east. And it's just a beautiful sunshiny day here in SoCal. No fires today, if you've heard
Okay.
about those. Yes, so clean air and can't wait to get out there on my bike this afternoon.
So
It's
so
about,
t-
yeah,
so tell me in terms of the fires we've heard a lot about in the media and so on. So you're kind of away from that.
about 100 and some miles. And so, um, sometimes the air gets a little, you know, particulated, if you will. And we have our own fires down here in San Diego. The difference is we put our fires out really quick.
Okay.
You yet we have these smoke jumpers here with planes. I live on a lake, and they practice their swooping down to get the water and go spread it around. And so our fire departments here are just outstanding,
Right.
quick, and as long as they have water, they can put fires out.
So it's pretty exciting to see them coming in with the kind of scoops, or it depends if it's the helicopter or the aircraft, and they kind of scoop the water up and then come along and dump it again.
Exciting or frightful, frightening. Because when you're up close, we like, out my windows are hills,
Right.
and when you see smoke coming over the hill, and then a plane coming in, and they use a lot of helicopters too.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's who gets the water out of my lake. We have a huge lake, and it's mostly helicopters, different varieties, and they practice here quite a bit, whether they work for the police or the county or what department. It's very interesting, and it's a big thing. We pay a lot of money for our fire insurance, and we
Right.
have to clear all of our brush. Remember, I live in the hills where it's just dry and heavily brushed, a lot of brush. And so we have to trim all that all the time to keep it back.
It's interesting because I was listening about the insurance. I know as a sidetrack, but I heard some quote of some places of 120,000 a year for insurance or 140,000. Does that sound
That
a bit
would be a pretty big place. Yeah. I
right?
pay about 1,000 a month.
Oh, that's a lot still,
Just
though.
my house. I have 5 acres of property, but it's your house you're insuring and the contents. You have what's called a wraparound policy. So I got that experience, honestly, learning the ropes when I moved out to the country. I used to live in the city, but um, got tired of that.
And to make people jealous now, especially in Ireland because it's quite cold. So, what is the temperature like in San Diego as we speak?
Well, as we speak, it's a little chilly today at 54 degrees Fahrenheit. I
Okay.
can't, I don't know what that is Celsius, but it's um it's where you'd have to wear a sweater
All
if you
right.
went out.
Okay. But in Ireland, we have to wear like jackets and jumpers, so we'll take a sweater.
Yeah. Some days I put on a t-shirt under my uh collared shirt and I'm fine.
Right.
Except,
You're gonna
colder
make
at
us
night, of
you're making us
course.
jealous now, Reid. You are. You're kind of like a little t-shirt under your collar. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I have friends and associates who are in the northern states, and they'll tell me that it's snowing, and I go, "Well, here we're just shoveling sunshine."
All right. Okay. Yeah, we don't like them. Let's not talk about them anymore. So, so tell me, Reid. So, I've told a little bit of listeners about your background. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. So, start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out.
I mean, childhood aside, I had a very happy childhood and lots of education and work experience for many decades, actually. In my 40s, I was in environmental law and conservation, so saving the whole planet air, birds, water, trees, bees. And I just started wondering about people. Well, what about us? If you see, David, if you see enough dead birds and fish, and you can clean up the water and different things and the air, all that. But what about the damage to people? And so I changed jobs. I went to work in a clinic, what we call a wellness center here in Southern California. And I didn't know much. I had a lot to learn, but I had nothing to unlearn. And that turned out to be a really good thing. I was amazed there that how many people were stuck. I observed people who had been to 6, 8, or 10 different practitioners already. Remember, they're coming in a wellness center for alternative treatment or resolutions, uh, and and were just seeking, and it had been to so many practitioners already. And when they told me that they weren't better yet, I thought, well, that's strange. That's a ripoff. They're being ripped off. Whatever they're going out and doing. If you've seen 8 or 10 practitioners and you're not better, there's something amiss. You'd agree.
Yes.
And so I was out riding my motorcycle one day, and I just determined that I would be the last person they needed to see. Again, no medical background, but I had access through this wellness center to all kinds of what we now call functional lab work. So there's functional medicine. It's a little different than standard medicine. They look more for underlying causes. It's an evolution that's taking place. But I was able to, even back then, immediately start running or ordering for these patients coming in the alternative labs, saliva testing, urine testing, stool testing, and blood work, of course. But again, many had been told that there's nothing wrong with you. Your blood work looks normal, yet they knew something was wrong. So that's what starts them going from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So when they got to me, I said, hey, I'll do my very best. I don't know if I can help you, but we need to run some of these functional labs. And I became known for that. I was running more labs than any other 5 practitioners at the time. And that's what the labs told me. Uh, and eventually, after 10 years of doing that, obviously I made some observations and created a system and a methodology of only looking for underlying causes and conditions. So I remember I wasn't a doctor, so you can't diagnose and treat specifics. That's practicing medicine. No one coming in our office wanted another diagnosis and pills or something. They wanted to know what was really wrong. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right mentors. And there was one lab that I used. It was in San Diego. I could go down there on weekends and meet with the scientists there and the other doctors who wanted to learn. And we did that for years. And then of course I ran a lot of those labs on our patients. And I would consult and sorted out a system, again with good mentorship. But when you do that much work, that volume, you make your own observations. And that's the strength of our program. It's very practical. It's not something I learned in a weekend workshop, although I went to many. Yeah, I learned it face to face with Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones and the people coming in the office who were suffering, who were tired of all of that, and I wanted to be the last guy. So as I say, I had a lot to learn, but nothing to unlearn. I didn't have to give up any previous belief or system, especially the diagnosis and treatment model. Wasn't trained in it, not really allowed to do it. So these causal factors that I learned to uncover quite easily now, with the advancements, became the system that I teach today. So I'm a teacher, and I teach a course in this functional lab work, but only as it applies to all natural drug-free solution. 'Cause remember, I also couldn't get out a prescription pad.
Right.
Oh, here, just take this. And the doctor, I'll finish that introduction and background with the doctors there laughed at me because they would laugh and say, well, Reed, we could just diagnose them and write them a prescription. You can't. You have to actually figure out what's wrong and teach them how to fix it. And that's the basis of our work.
Did you get resistance from that? Because if you're going beyond the call of duty per se, and these patients are coming in and they're saying our wellness center people that have certain illnesses and are going back 7 or 8 times, and then you're kind of seeing this from a different angle altogether, that, there's something obviously much deeper here that we need to investigate. Did you find any backlash from that? From the professional side, but also from some patients?
You know, for the other practitioners in the office, the doctors there actually encouraged me. They were thrilled. And I actually became their alter ego. Because remember, they're not allowed to do it. Their handcuffs are tied by the licensure and boards and standard of care and their insurance company payments and control over the. I wasn't. I was a fee for service guy, so I could order anything through them. They let me use their lab accounts at first, but um, I could really just do anything. My hands were not tied. The only concern I had was the standard of care and what the insurance pays for and all this other stuff. It was, what does Mrs. Smith need to know? What's the data we could get that would identify this is the phrase, healing opportunities.
Right.
That's not a diagnosis. It's what's really wrong. And I found patterns, and after 10 years and thousands of people and thousands of left, but I didn't get any backlash from them at all. If anything, again, it was more encouragement and you go read, and that kind of a thing. Now, the patients were also very, very gung ho, and they were willing to take responsibility.
Right.
And those that weren't good clients at all. There were these people were patients of the office, but I didn't call them patients. I called them my clients because that's how it worked. That's the fee for service, cash, basically. They're willing to pay for the labs and for my time to interpret and teach them what it means and all of that. So it was a learn as you go, but after 10 years, I dialed it in to a system. I'm a good organizer, um, and I'm able to take complex things and make them simple. I was the patient educator. I could teach Mrs. Smith why she felt the way she does. When other practitioners, well, we don't know. Here's your medication.
Right. And did you have to say, to the more you did this, did you have to kind of retrain, go back to college? Did you to
Oh
gain
yeah,
more respect within the industry to keep
you
this
know,
show on the
I
road?
was I was an honors graduate of a very prestigious environmental law program. So that's a good start in knowing I could take on complex things and simplify it. But no, I took nutrition and fitness and all kinds. I think I have 15 certificates. I just got a new one a couple weeks ago, board certified doctor of functional nutrition. So I continue with education and things. So I have so many certificates of completion. I don't have a doctorate in from a medical university, but I have the experience of 10 of them put together, all from a different perspective. I think that's the key.
Mhm.
It's like it doesn't matter what they do in their backyard. I don't play in that backyard or that sandbox or cat box or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, yeah,
It's a different backyard. And so I know mine really well. And I've always strived to integrate with someone who needs medical care. I'm not saying they don't need medical care. A lot of them do, but
yeah.
it's what else do they need? And that's where we come in.
Do
It's
you,
everything else you need to the point where, well, hopefully you don't need medical assistance or treatment anymore. You can get
yeah.
off the medication, avoid the surgery, or sometimes, well, go ahead and get it, and then we'll start there with wherever you're at that time.
Were there any like light bulb moments in any of your say clients per se,
Yeah.
where they had been taking certain prescriptions or drugs for a certain period of time, and then they kind of went, "Oh, okay, this guy's onto something." Or
Well,
was
sure,
there
almost
kind of
daily.
self-restriction in the
That's
mind, the old-fashioned mentality, the doctor's right, and I must follow that system?
I got a little bit when you mentioned the resistance, there was a couple people who questioned, me, Well, my doctor says this. And I said, well, that's because they're trained in that. That's what they look for. They're not looking for what I'm looking for. So that usually assuaged their concerns. And they would either invest in the lab work and my fees or not. And if they did, we'd find those underlying healing opportunities. And so the light bulb moments were numerous, just almost daily, I would say. Remember, I did this 10 years, so you light bulb moments become patterns. So, for instance, a lady comes in and she was there for chiropractic care, mostly her neck and back. That's why she came in at first. And I was walking her back to a treatment room as I was greeting people and triaging kind of, and a case manager uh, for the whole place. And I could tell she was sad that day. She was just staring at the floor. I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Oh, Reed, it's this 40 pounds, I'm overweight." And I wanted to butt in and say, well, why don't we do something? And she was just determined to tell her story. I'm just so over this 40 pounds, and it's only been 2 years that I gained this 40 pounds. And it's because I'm on medication for the hives for skin condition.
Right.
And and again, I'm ready to jump in, but and it's just so frustrating because she had just been to the physician who has her on the medication, and she told him how frustrating it was. And his answer, according to her, was, lady, you can be fat or you can have the hives. Take your pick.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay.
So the light bulb comes on here. So she then said, and read, because I'm ready to jump on this. And, I'm a helper, dude. So she says, and Reed, when I told him after he said you could be fat or you could have the hives, that's very depressing. His answer was, well, I can give you a prescription for antidepressants.
Okay.
So
So
here
that
comes the
was
light bulb
just
moment.
kicking the can.
Here comes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very. Now I knew why she was staring at the floor looking so sad.
Yeah.
And beyond frustrated, just depressed, really. So here comes the light bulb. I said to her, finally, first name, why don't we find out why you get the hives?
Yeah.
And man, her head did an exorcist 360 3 times. I thought she wouldn't need her chiropractic treatment that day. What? And so yeah, that's the light bulb. What do you mean find out why I get the hives? In 2 years, her physician had never even suggested it, mentioned it. It's just you have hives, here's your medication. It works to some extent. She told me also that she hadn't had a hot shower or worked out to a sweat, worked out to perspiration in 2 years, because even on the medication, that gave her the hives too. She would still get the hives. And so um, I said, well, I'm not sure if I can help you, but I sure would like to try. We've got some lab tests. We might be able to find out why you get that, what's triggering this response in the skin. And sure enough, I think we only ran 2 labs with her at first, and found out immediately what was triggering. And within 9 days after I met with her to go over her lab test results, and changed her diet and some things, within 9 days, she told me this later, within 9 days, she had called her physician and said, I'm off this medication because I found out why I get the hives.
Wow. Okay.
So if that isn't a light bulb moment, I don't know what is it. And for me at the time, I just thought I was lucky. But then I realized that, well, whoo, shoo.
Yeah. Jackpot. Yeah.
Well, that was 20 plus years ago. And so when you have enough of those experiences, by at least looking for the underlying, at least look, and then the labs were getting better and better. There's scientists behind the labs for these alternative labs were very good, very smart, brilliant, much smarter than me. But I was able to take what they had developed and convert it to practical usage, for mom and pop, and their children, and so it became quite a thing. So that's a light bulb moment when wow, and many other stories like that. I have countless I mean, all those years of practice, I stumbled across a few things that became a pattern, a reliable, repeatable system of investigation.
What do you think? Actually, before that, I'll ask that question a little bit in a moment. But the lady that had the hives, say after the 9 days, kind of cleared up, and the why do you think that physicians, and this is not to be critical of any physicians or nurses or anybody out there,
Sure,
why
sure.
do you think they do not go to the level of detail and investigation of finding out the individual's problems rather than just prescribing X, Y, Z, right? See you later, bye bye. Do you think it's a time constraint, or do you think it's based on maybe practices that go back many, many, many years that this is just the way it is?
When a patient asks me that, I would kind of shrug my shoulders and say, I don't know, here's what we do. And and but if I was pressed, I would say, well, they're not trained in these labs. These labs aren't taught in the universities and medical schools that they went to because they're considered alternative,
Right,
and insurance doesn't pay for alternative lab testing. It's out of pocket.
right,
And physicians are really reticent, if they're even allowed to, by their insurance contract. They have contracts with the insurance companies that keep sending them lots of customers or patients. And so they're bound by these algorithms, they're called, of how they look at things. Their job is to relieve symptoms. And certainly the pills can relieve symptoms. That's relief care. And we're more interested in corrective care, which isn't generally covered by insurance. Nowadays, you'll find anti-aging and prevention to loom pretty large in the insurance industry. But back then, it was, hey, you get that lady out of the office as fast as you can, and that would be by writing a prescription and saying, "I'll see you in a couple months." So the time factors in there, as you mentioned. Um, if you're a more cynical answer might be that it doesn't butter their bread as well to cure patients. You
right.
know, there are stories that went around about how a functional medicine practitioner or naturopath or person like me, and we now have our own certification, accreditation, and things for the system I developed. It took me 15 years, but it took me 10 years to develop and 15 years to get the accreditation that we have. But you know, I've heard about doctors going in, another doctor goes on hiatus, he wants to take 6 months off, and someone comes in and cures all his patients.
All right,
He's left,
okay.
he's left with no client base, no patient base.
Right.
If you fix them all, you go out of business
Yeah.
in that world. And so that's seems very cynical perhaps, but there's there's a touch of everything in there that's worth looking at.
I mean, I could be quite cynical as well, I have to say, because doing these podcasts as well, you hear these different kind of stories and people's knowledge and the background and what they've experienced. And I think I suppose at the end of the day, if you go into a profession, I think when I was growing up, that I was led to believe that the doctor knew right and the nurse knew
Me
right.
too.
And it's kind of like you trust them, and then you do get a cynical side later on when you actually see stuff, and you kind of go, oh, "Okay, well maybe it is a money thing. I don't know. I'm hoping the goodness is there. If you don't try to get at, I'm
I
hoping,
sure do.
yeah,
Yes, and it's hard to spot because physicians are also taught bedside manner and how to be nice to people and good customer service in a sense. So it's really two different backyards. We're not in competition with physicians. If you're the victim of a drive-by shooting in Belfast or something, you're not going to call your nutritionist, are you?
no,
You
no,
know,
definitely not. Give me a shot of vitamin C there, please, or a B12 or something.
yeah, let's change your diet. That
Yeah.
gunshot wound will go away all by itself.
Yeah, I like the way you say that.
Or
That's quite good. Yeah.
yeah. So we know when urgent care or heroic care is needed, and that's where you go. But once you got the life jacket on, or um, you're out of the woods, so to speak, in terms of contracted downward spiral to death, then you're you ready for our backyard? Well, how
Yeah.
can I prevent disease in the future? And or just like I said, the people who are caught in that cycle of trial and error, um, they need a different outlook. And causal factors are not that hard to identify. Um, I could go on about that for a sec if you want, because I
Yeah,
really
go
would
ahead.
like to convey to the audience that there's well thought out programs like mine that really look at all the causal factors at once. It's a very holistic approach. And here's something you don't hear a lot, David. Those holistic or those causal factors are having an effect on each other
Right.
in ways that maybe can't even be measured, not singly measured. And I'm a guy, I teach a course in lab work. I know a little bit about it. And so when I say you can't measure some of these things, there just isn't tests. There aren't tested. They're not developed well enough. Although I've helped now with development because I've been doing this a long time and made a lot of observations, and I can see what's needed by the person. Everything we do is connected to a person. We don't treat the test results. What's another sort of cynical view I might have of a lot of standard medicine is they're treating the paper. You come in and oh look, you've got this and this. It might not even be related to their complaint. They haven't done the clinical correlation, and they just go, this is high, this is low. Here's what you need to raise or lower those numbers. That's treating the paper.
Right.
So ours is even the way we interpret is different than that. We don't treat the paper.
So I mean, in your own experience, what is the most common issue that an individual or a person would come to you with? Are we talking about stomach issues, liver, sleep,
No, those are the
anything?
results.
Right.
If you have a symptom like indigestion, you mentioned heartburn, gas, indigestion, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, name another cluster of symptoms, doesn't matter. Whatever the symptoms are, aren't the problem.
Right.
They're the result of the problem.
Okay.
So, let's take stress, for instance. Have you heard that term before?
Oh,
So,
every day. Even talking to you right now, Reed. It's a pleasure, but it's stressful. Am I joking?
well, you had to show up and you had to turn the lights on and get the background going and
Yeah.
get the camera right and all that. So yeah, there's stress in what we do. Matter of fact, it's so common, ubiquitous that we just ignore it. We don't even know how much stress we're under. A lot of us who are, let's say, successful in business and things. And 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 it happens to everybody. But stress isn't just mental and emotional, anxiety from busyness and overly sympathetic dominant, you're in fight flight. You don't even know it sometimes. Um, there's also physical stress. Remember, I started in a wellness center where we did a lot of physical musculoskeletal or musculoskeletal, as you might say over there. And well, all those aches and pains are another form of stress. And I personally will attest that's my issue. I have such a well-used body that, I'm just all this stuff I did when I was younger adds up and it takes its toll and you need to manage it and handle it. Or it's just another kind of stress. So you take the mental emotional stress of being busy and you got a life, relationships and money and whatever. You got all these aches and pains from old injuries or something. Mine is sports and motorcycles. Um, you got to watch that cordless bungee jumping. That's the worst one.
All right.
So
That's a cancelled off the bucket list. Okay.
I
No.
just wanted to see if that would go this way or actually catch that. So
There we go.
nice to know if the host is listening.
That's
So
it. Oh no, I'm listening deeply. Go ahead. But the
you're
one thing I was
doing
hoping to do,
fantastic.
Reed, but it's not going to happen now. You've talked me out of it.
So there's the mental, emotional, daily, constant sympathetic overload and then there's the nagging aches and pains from past traumas and things like that to the body. And then remember where I started in this whole field was in environmental law and conservation. I know what a toxic soup we're all marinating in.
Yeah.
The stuff that's in our food. Now, actually, in Ireland, it's better because and lots of other places. The United States has about the worst quality food on the planet. We have the most deaths from things that, like when COVID came along, we make up 4.5% of the population of the world. We made up 60% of the deaths from COVID
Wow.
because of the comorbidities, because of how sick everyone was already had 3.5 diagnoses and medications and things. That's why we got spanked so hard by the pandemic. We were already unhealthy.
And why is the
We
food
already,
so?
it was already a pandemic, if you will, of ill health.
But why is that? Is it because is it is it what they're putting into the food to keep it alive for longer, like processed food? Is that what the issue is for most of us that we're eating on the run, we're not being healthy, we're not. Let me
All the
know.
above, all the above. But as my Irish grandmother would say, it's all the shite they put in your food.
That's that's very true. We hear that on a daily basis. Your grandmother just didn't say that. I probably said that about an hour ago as well. Yeah, the shite we put in the food. You're right.
Not to mention what's in the air and the water and every, the environment, so to speak. So and I was in that field for as long as I've been in this one, 25 years. So I there's been a lot of good work done with the environment, but we're still, when you look at what's allowed to go into the additives and things that go into our food, the addictive additives that go into and what we're feeding our children. That's why we have the most obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and all these other things. So the answer seems simple. Change that, and you can make America healthy again.
Right.
I think someone coined that phrase there somewhere.
Yes,
But
I got my cap on. I'll have it soon, don't worry.
so yeah, but it's true. So I think we were before we slid off the track there just a little bit, talking about, or we should be talking about people taking responsibility. The technology's there, the data is collectible. And anyone can do it. The labs that I teach people to use are available over the counter. You don't have to be a doctor to order them. We can get
Right.
them directly from the labs. And so people can collect saliva, some urine, a little finger stick, get some blood. You drip some blood out on a blotter, you let it dry and mill it in. Same thing with urine. That can be dried and sent in on blotters. So it's kind of easy now to get the data
Right.
on the healing opportunities and to connect the dots as I was explaining. And then the protocol for that person isn't changing habits. I think that's where I was going because it's not so easy to change habits. We are addicted. See, I got my white cup right here too, just like you do,
There
right?
you go.
Same one. Here,
I have
cheers.
my cheers, I have my green tea. That's what it is. Cheers.
Yeah, I mean, I got my things I like to do, and
So
hopefully
tell me,
most
Reece, so
people.
from so for the FDN approach, so if I was now going to you tomorrow, right, and I said, right, I'm not feeling the best, or this has been going on for a period of time, what is the process that from start to finish? If I was to approach you or your company or organization, how would that work?
First, you write me a check.
That's a good start. Yep,
I
priority.
mean, when I walk into my lawyer's office and I say blah 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 blah, he goes, "Okay, write me a check,"
Give me a check.
and I'm hired. It's like, and I don't know how many checks I've given that guy, but it's a fee for service business, and I'm being glib, of course, but um, you agree to run some labs and then follow my instructions or recommendations once we get the test results back. So step one is to get the labs done. I like to do 5 labs on every person.
Right,
Hormone, immune system, and digestion and detoxification, energy production, nervous system balance. These are the foundations of good health. You could add a couple in, but that's good enough. That, by the way, spells hidden, HIDDEN, hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system balance. So that's a mouthful, and that's some lab work, and that's an investment.
right,
And then once we get all of the reports from the labs, we just correlate it with your intake, everything we found and know about you. We have some pretty extensive, medical history and lifestyle forms and what we call our metabolic chaos scorecard, some other things that tell us what's going on with you. And then we correlate that with you. And we teach people these labs explain why you feel like crap,
Right.
especially when maybe a physician told you nothing's wrong with you because their blood works looked normal. The ranges are so wide, you'd have to be diagnosable before they'll write a prescription and tell you here's your diagnosis. So we don't do that. We look at all of these things together, correlate that really well with a person, make sure they understand. This explains why you feel bad. Why do we do that? It takes a lot of time sometimes.
Right.
Education, a lot of patient education. And it's so that they'll be more likely to follow the recommendations. And they're easy to make. Those come in 5 areas: diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. So once we do HIDDEN investigation, the labs are all out of the way, saliva, urine, blood, stool. Now we can recommend, based on one individual, diet, that's DRESS, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. And again, diet is a huge influence. The signals from diet, we call them epigenetic signaling to get your genes to express in a good way. You can't change your parents. I would never want to change my Nana because she was the most wonderful Irish woman that ever lived, and things. But she had her things. But you can't change your parents. So you never change your genes.
No.
The only thing you can do is change what are called epigenetic factors, what influences the genes, how they get expressed.
Right.
And so what you want to do is live to your fullest genetic potential. Mine does not include being an NBA star, the Basketball Association, or even a hockey star, even though I wanted to be one, hockey star. But
They're
I can
always
do other
injured
stuff.
anyway. They're always fighting. I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah. Well, that was the fun part. I grew up in Canada. I told you I live in San Diego. I'm Mexican Canadian. And
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, so I grew up on skates. And anyway, genetic potential is an individual thing.
Right.
Can you be your very, very best? Live your longest, healthiest, happiest life. And so with the labs and the healing opportunities, highly correlated with the person will help craft that individual DRESS program. I mean, when you get the diet right alone, just get the diet right for your genetics, means the world. I've just seen things just shoot up health wise. But you also need to go to bed on time and get a good night's sleep and rest your mind and other things. Behind this, behind this screen right here, I have a day bed in my office because I like to take naps. Why? Because I have to rest my weary brain from having started so early in the morning, concept shifting from one podcast to a meeting with staff to, working on my course, biology, physiology, anatomy, to public relations. So I need to rest my brain. So diet, rest, which is more than sleep. Exercise, we don't have to talk about that. I'm sure you've had lots of good, but it's appropriate for one's age. Now I'm 71, going on 72. I can't exercise. Like there's things I just don't do anymore. I don't do the jujitsu wrestling. I keep getting hurt now. The kickboxing, my hip is all out because of it, and so you exercise appropriate for your genetics and potential and history. Diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction is a whole show. I could come back and we could spend the whole interview on just stress reduction. Remember what I said, there's that mental, emotional, the physical aches and pains, and the chemical. And we didn't mention it, but there's psychospiritual stress. You don't have a purpose in life. You're probably going to be depressed a little bit. So there's all of this types of stress management and then finally with supplements. So DRESS. The last one is supplements, and I don't really sell them, but I know a lot about them, and I make recommendations because we're undernourished. We're malnourished. There's not enough stuff good vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, phytonutrients in food. It's not in food. Food is so commercially uh, produced, it's bereft of all the nutrition that our genes are meant to get. So supplements are important just from that standpoint alone. And they can be used to support systems and that you want to support. And they can be used for self-treatment even of certain conditions. And very interesting.
When do you think, Reid, in terms of the change in relation to nutrition and food and having to use supplements, when do you think that time was? Are we talking the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s when things just kind of
Mm.
changed into more of a process type of
Yeah,
mentality?
great question. Great question. I think the answer is always it depends, but like, both in Canada, both my grandfathers grew food, and
Right,
my brother and I would work in their gardens, and we would, till the soil, and we would pull up the vegetables. I remember the carrots and the tomatoes and um, the fruit, the different things that were just growing in the backyard, more or less. And so that was very nutritious. We would rinse it off in rainwater and eat a lot of it raw. So we're getting a lot of those things I mentioned, the micronutrients. And you have to get enough of the macronutrients in the right ratios, protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So, but it's all sortable. It's all figure outable, if that's a word.
right,
We can sort it out. And so the difference, your question, even back then, I mean, 70 years ago, my brother and sister and I were taking cod liver oil, for instance, in the wintertime. My mom just knew, growing up in Canada, you need vitamin D. It's critical for all kinds of health reasons. And so you can get it by supplementing. We took cod liver oil every winter till I was a teenager.
right.
So it's always been around, this supplementation, but and not like it is today. It's so commercial, and it's hard on people because if you go in the store and read labels, I need that. Read it. Oh, I need that one. Well, that's how they write it.
Yeah,
So that it seems like, and there's a partial truth to every single claim made. But food is the best source. I'm always looking for what can I eat, and even we grow. My wife and I grow our own food. We have herbs and things, and uh, so you can do better than you're doing
right,
with food. And then again, the other lifestyle things, the rest and the exercise and the stress reduction are critical. You got to get out of that sympathetic fight flight that we're stuck in. There's good, easy ways to do it. And then take your supplements because you need the darn nutrients.
right. So obviously your wife stuck with you even with the cod liver oil, Brett. Definitely. She
Well, I'm
did.
on my fifth wife.
Well done. Congratulations. Was that because of the cod liver oil or because you stopped taking the cod liver oil?
No, you know what? We still get our vitamin D. I mean, I have bottles of stuff on my desk here,
Right.
and so we're always playing around with it. Spending too much money on it. Life could be simpler, but it's the business we're in, so we're kind of obliged to try stuff.
Yeah. So your health is your wealth. So what about then sleep? So you mentioned there just briefly, just an overview for anybody listening to this. Many you said about naps as well, but many hours should we be getting? And should it be specific to a certain time zone? So is it okay going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and then waking up at 10, getting your 8 hours sleep? Or should we be going to bed at 8 o'clock, getting up a little bit earlier, if that makes sense?
If you're part bat, then yeah, probably that would night shift would work out for you.
Right.
But we're not. We are what are called diurnal. We're not nocturnal. That's animal that is awake at night, and we're awake in the day. We're diurnal animals, as the saying goes. So there's a natural rhythm and cycle, and when you understand the cycle, you'd be inclined to go to bed a little earlier. My dad always said, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and advertise.
That's the Irish. There we go.
Well, the idea was, the best part of the day was waking up and we'd be headed for the fishing hole and it's still dark outside. I wonder what the hell are we doing here? Uh, you know, best time of day, watch the sun come up and all that. But there's a actually scientific evidence, lots of studies on sleep that following a good nocturnal or pardon me, diurnal rhythm or cycle is really good for you. And you'll be more rested, obviously, but the hormones are more balanced. You've got better digestion, you've got better immune system, you've got all these systems that need to be uh, daily uh, restored, detoxed, or otherwise rejuvenated. Even your mind. They always say sleep on it, right? Well, go
Yeah.
home and sleep on it. Why? Because your brain through the night will work on that thing and you'll wake up in the morning feeling better about it. Well, good thing I didn't say what I thought I would say.
So how then really do you stay motivated? So in this industry, and say for example, you're trying to find out the root cause of an issue with a client, and it's taking a bit longer. How do you stay motivated as Reed Davis? I mean, do you
I
get
have a
days
purpose.
frustration? Or I know you mentioned the purpose thing. Yeah, is that how it works? Is it?
That's it. I wake up every day knowing what my purpose is. This is uh, depending on your audience, I don't know how to say it, but it's a spiritual thing. I connect to the maker, and I know what I'm here for, and I'm very blessed to be able to do this. And remember that lady I told you about who told her doctor
But the
after
hives?
9 days,
Yeah,
take your medicine and shove it?
yeah.
That made well. She also said, "Oh, and by the way, Reed, I'm also working out to a sweat, and I'm taking hot showers for the first time in 2 years."
Right.
How good do you think that made me feel?
Oh, without a
I can
doubt.
tell you other stories about the children and these amazing things that happen. That sends chills up your spine. That's that's what keeps you motivated is the successes, and um, I'm pretty respected, and there's all the things. There's status, and there's money, and there's all that, and but that's doesn't get you up every day. What gets you up is that knowing that you're doing a lot of good. So just to kind of on that note, that's what made me start teaching because I was fine just developing a system for our office. We were an office in Southern California, lots of patients, and the reputation was increasing, and and I was gaining some notoriety as a healing helper dude, not a doctor, but someone with a system that could be followed by anyone, repeatable and reliable. And so it was actually one of the lab directors called me up one day and said, "Who the hell are you?" "What do you mean?" "I'm Reed." Well, you do more labs than any five doctors combined. Our next best five customers running lab work, you do as much as all of them combined and more some months. And that blew my mind. I didn't know. I had no clue. It's just what I do. And he said, "Well, whatever it is, you should be teaching because you could be helping a lot more people."
Right.
In other words, in my office, you could see 1,000 people a year. So 10,000 people later, I'm being told, you know what? If you taught others, think of how many people would be helped. And so now I've trained over 4,000 practitioners.
Wow.
So if they all did 1,000 people a year, and they don't because a lot of them aren't very good business people, but they help someone somewhere, and that's the purpose. That's what gets you up and gets you going.
No, very inspirational. Fair play to you. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, especially when there's so much information out there and kind of I wouldn't say the dinosaur mentality, but sometimes people don't like change. And for somebody like yourself to actually to do that and to also help is really admirable. So well done to you. The other thing I want to ask, we spoke about earlier on. Obviously, you need a bit of free time and you have to enjoy yourself. So in terms of you mentioned motorcycles and you said gardening. So what's this thing with the motorcycles and the gardening that you like?
Oh, I started riding when I was little and never gave it up. A lot of my friends rode too, but I just never gave, I just love motorcycles and motorcycling. I've had as many as I think 8 at one time, but you can't ride them all. So now I have down to 3 motorcycles. Two, well, all 3 are Harleys. Two
Okay.
are the big bad boys, and one is a 1965 Pacer,
Oh wow. Okay.
the classic small bike when everyone else was riding Honda 50s in the 60s, we were riding these Harleys that are a little bigger, a little tougher. And I have one, a classic. But anyway, so I take my wife all the time. We just go out and ride. My son and I go on a trip every year. We ride a couple thousand miles. So we'll fly somewhere, rent bikes there, ride them over to here, and turn them in and fly back. It just depends on
Wow.
how you want to do it. Yeah, we're planning this summer to fly to Barcelona, rent motorcycles there. We belong to this rental club.
Right.
For anyone that's interested, it's called Eagle Rider. Look
Eagle
up
Rider. Is there
Eagle
a
Rider.
website?
Yeah, eaglerider.com.
And do you have jackets and stuff like that, and like the big helmet?
We have gear. I have a whole collection. I mean, you could come to my house and out in the garage, I have a big cabinet. I could line you up with all the leathers and vests and helmets and boots and
And is this your
stuff.
first time to Barcelona? Is it?
So we're gonna fly to Barcelona, get on these bikes from Eagle Rider there,
Right.
ride through France into Italy, Switzerland, down into Germany, and we'll turn the bikes in there and fly back.
Oh wow.
If that if it that's the plan, it can always change because um, that's how things work. We've done it before. Uh, uh, Last time we flew to over the pond was to we started off in Manchester, believe it
Oh
or not.
nice. Manchester's a
Yeah,
good city, but I was only in Barcelona 2 weeks ago. Really
you're
good
kidding.
spot. It's uh,
I've never been there. Heard it's wonderful.
it's wonderful. Go to the Sagrada Familia. It's this wonderful church that they're building and doing up and stuff like that. It's really stunning and get yourself central. So, well, you'll have your motorbike anyway. There was a story there before, a pal of mine. There was a group of these Harley drivers in actually they're actually in was it Manchester? And my pal said to me that they were big American, they were big burly guys and they had the beards and all this type of stuff. And my pal said to
Yeah.
me, he says, I dare you to push their bike. I said, no chance. I said, I want to live another day. So what about the gardening then? So what's this about the gardening? A pal of mine does the gardening. Are we talking about proper
Oh,
gardening
well,
or are we just a few plants here and there, vegetables?
as I mentioned, both my grandfathers were growers, and I just kind of, I don't know if I inherited the green thumb, so to speak, but I have planted over 2,000 succulent plants, just decorative stuff. And I
Right.
have 5 acres, so and it's landscaped, and I have my own tractor, so I can. It's a skip loader is what it's called, but I can move big rocks around, and we have thousands of rocks on the property that we've built stone walls and steps, and I've got the whole thing here. It's a real setup. Overlooks the lake. Uh, got the deck, glass wall, the swimming pool, the whole thing. So I spend a lot of time outside and doing that.
So you're it's great exercise, very therapeutic, and that's why you sleep at night more than likely when you do the gardening.
Yeah, I mean, as you get older, sleep becomes more of an issue, I think, than when I was younger. You're not as active, and um, you can have issues that we all have something. No one's perfect. If health was a stairway, we're all on it somewhere,
Yeah,
but I don't know anyone at the top.
no,
I
not
don't
yet
know
anyway.
anyone that's perfectly healthy. And if they are, they're probably a liar.
Yeah,
But
we'll say nothing. So so before we go, Reed, so I'm looking at your website here, be very nosy. I've not been ignoring you, but I am looking at it. So it's Functional Diagnostic Nutrition.com or FDN. So there's lots of information here. You have your services, you have free resources, the FDN program, and how an individual or a group of individuals can get in touch with you. So what is the best way to get in touch with Reed?
so as you mentioned, what I do is functional diagnostic nutrition. It's the name I gave the system long time ago, and now I'm stuck with it. But for short, we call it FDN. And there's FDN practitioners all over. We have them in Ireland, actually. And well, I know that's where you are, but all over. So fdntraining.com/career world in honor of this podcast. So fdntraining.com/career world. And that way we could know that, someone was actually watching your show and clicked.
Yes, well, that's pretty important. Yeah, so at least there's only one person out there. Please click it.
Yeah, everybody go ahead. Let us know. David's, providing some good, if nothing else, entertainment, but hopefully some good career advice. And it is an excellent profession. And I teach it that you could make it a hobby. But for me, like my gardening and my motorcycle, that's my hobby. Hobbies cost you money, a
Yeah.
lot of money. This is to make this is something that you could do for a career, which means professional, which means fee for service, and you could do very well for yourself if you're looking for a career change or if something we talked about excited you. You can also just do it for your personal health reasons.
And is there anywhere
That,
else?
that alone is worth the price of admission, So yeah, thank you for letting me give that out. fdntraining.com/career world.
No worries. What I'll do is when the podcast is released, I'll put all the links in. So if anybody's out there,
Okay,
get
perfect.
in touch and then they can get
Yeah.
in touch with you directly. The other thing I was going to ask, like, are you on the LinkedIn's, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the all these wonderful
Yeah,
names?
I'm not. Hey, for me, back in the day, I built a really good business with a pager and a fax machine.
Right.
So that was high tech to
Yeah.
me, pager and fax machine. So all of the other stuff, I have staff that keep us, in the mix there. FDN training, I think, is our Instagram, and Facebook. It's Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We're out there. You can find us.
Oh no, I'll put the links up. Don't worry, they will find you. Like Liam Neeson in
Oh, okay.
Taken, they will find you, Reed. I promise you.
Yeah. And
So,
thank you very much.
so also we say thanks so much to Reed Davis for chatting me on the Wellbeing Cripple podcast. Once the podcast is approved and released, I'll put all the links in. And as Reed said, please send a comment, get in touch, and if you need any more information, you can contact Reed directly. So thanks so much, Reed, for chatting today on the podcast.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.